Underway for a suspect accused of shooting and killing a mother and son in Henderson. It happened last night on Maple Street. Police say they found 63-year-old Teresa Davis and her son, 26-year-old Joseph Jeffries, shot to death. Authorities are now searching for 41-year-old Michael Wright. They believe he's driving a white Hyundai Sonata. He's considered armed and dangerous. You can call the Henderson police if you have any information.
That's so heartbreaking, but for her kids, the grandkids, to be in the car and his kids, to see their daddy and their grandmother get killed. It was over trash. Over some freaking trash. This woman is gone. This boy is gone over some trash.
Y'all know Father's Day is supposed to be about family, right? Barbecues, kids running around, maybe some laughs over dinner. But let me tell you something. June 15th, 2025, in Henderson, North Carolina, ended with 3 babies watching their daddy and grandmama get gunned down in cold blood. Make it make sense. A 63-year-old grandmother just trying to pack up her life. A 26-year-old father protecting his family. Both gone over some trash. Not drugs, not money, not some deep family feud. Trash. Standing at the center of it all was Michael Sharon, Wright, a neighbor with a past that most folks in that quiet community didn't even know about. This man had already taken one life years before, and now he was about to do something that would shake Henderson to its core. What happened on Maple Street that evening? How does an ordinary family moment turn into the kind of tragedy that has you questioning everything? And why does this story make you wonder who we really allowing back into our neighborhoods? This is the story of Teresa Davis, her son Joseph Jeffries Jr., and the man who ended it all on a day meant to celebrate family. You're watching Shadow Crimes TV, where we bring true crime and domestic violence stories out of the shadows. Subscribe now and join us daily as we uncover the cases that demand to be heard. Don't just watch, be part of the conversation. To understand why what happened that Father's Day hit so hard, you have to know who Teresa Davis and Joseph Jeffries Jr. really were. Joseph was only 26, but this man carried himself with the kind of responsibility you don't see much these days. He wasn't just a father, he was their father. 3 little ones under 6 years old who looked at him like he hung the moon and stars. People who knew Joseph will tell you he took pride in being present. School drop-offs, bedtime stories, late-night runs to the store when one of his babies had a fever. Joseph showed up every single time. He'd been with his partner since they were teenagers, and together they weathered every storm life threw at them. They raised their kids, built a home full of love, and that beautiful chaos that comes with young children. You know what I'm talking about. Toys everywhere, cartoons on the TV, and 3 little voices competing to tell Daddy about their day. For Joseph, his mama Teresa wasn't just family, she was his anchor. Taking care of her was non-negotiable, period. When Teresa decided to leave her old house and move in with him, he welcomed her with open arms like any son should. Teresa Davis was 63, but she moved around like she was half that age. Friends described her as the person you called when you needed anything. Babysitting, cooking for church functions, checking on neighbors who were feeling under the weather. Teresa had a heart that just didn't quit. She'd lived for years in a modest home on Maple Street, the kind of street where people wave from their porches and know each other's kids by name. Now across that same street lived 41-year-old Michael Sharon Wright and his wife. They had what you'd call a blended family, 2 children from previous relationships, and 1 baby who'd just been born in March of 2025. They'd been married since 2018. Even through the years Wright spent locked up, and had only recently started living together full-time after his release from prison in early 2024. On the surface, this looked like just another neighborhood. Families raising kids, people working their jobs, sharing the same street, minding their business, but underneath, girl, there were dynamics that most folks didn't talk about. Some neighbors knew Wright had a record. Others didn't know the full story at all. But what they were about to find out would change everything. When neighbors on Maple Street talked about Michael Sharon Wright, some saw just another man trying to get his life together. He was 41, recently out of prison, living with his wife and children, trying to make it work. But Michael's past was darker than most people realized. And let me tell you something, that darkness was about to surface in the worst way possible. Back in January of 2010, Michael committed a crime so disturbing that it sent shockwaves through his own family. His uncle, 54-year-old Kirk Douglas Wright Sr., had gone missing. When family members couldn't reach him and filed that missing person report, police launched a search that would end in absolute horror. That search led investigators to a shallow grave behind an abandoned house at the end of 4th Street. Inside that grave was Kirk Wright's body, and when the preliminary autopsy came back, it revealed something chilling. Kirk hadn't been shot or stabbed. He had been suffocated by his own nephew. The investigation moved fast after that discovery. Police focused on Michael Wright, who was just 26 years old at the time. For days, they searched across the Triangle and Triad areas, following every lead, piecing together his movements like a puzzle. When they finally caught up with him, Michael was charged and eventually pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. 15 years behind bars became his reality. But even while he was locked up, life kept moving on the outside. In May 2018, while still incarcerated, Michael got married. Now it's unclear exactly how they met. Maybe through social media while he was locked up, maybe through mutual friends, but his wife believed in him enough to stand by him through those years. She was out here raising her own children while waiting for the day they could finally live together as a family. That day came in January of 2024, when Michael walked out of prison a free man. When he moved to Maple Street, he was stepping into a ready-made family situation. 7 people under one roof. His 2 children, her 2 children, and the baby they'd had together in March 2025. On paper, it looked like a man trying to make up for lost time, trying to build something stable after years of being locked away. But some folks in the community had questions that just wouldn't go away. How does a person go from killing a family member to just starting over fresh in a quiet neighborhood? Was he really changed, or was something still there under the surface, waiting? These questions didn't seem urgent until that Father's Day, because it was right here, living across from Teresa Davis's house with his wife and children inside, that Michael Wright would once again find himself connected to unimaginable violence. And this time there would be witnesses who would never forget what they saw. For Teresa Davis, life had already been changing long before Father's Day rolled around. She had recently retired after decades of hard work, and her plan was simple but meaningful. Move in with her son Joseph, spend her golden years surrounded by her grandbabies, and finally enjoy that slower pace she'd earned through years of grinding. She was leaving behind her home on Maple Street, the place where she'd built so many memories, but she didn't need it anymore. Now she'd be living with family in Lewisburg, about 25 minutes south. This Father's Day was part celebration, part fresh start, a day to finish packing up the last of her belongings and officially close one chapter before stepping into another. That evening, Joseph, his longtime partner, and their 3 young children loaded up and drove to Teresa's old house. It was around 6:45 p.m., sunlight still spilling across the street as the kids played and laughed in the car, completely oblivious to anything beyond their little world of toys and snacks. But as Joseph and Teresa walked around the property, something stopped them cold. There was trash piled up and scattered in places it shouldn't have been. Old debris was dumped near the house they were working so hard to clear out, and according to what Joseph learned, the source of that trash was none other than their neighbor across the street, Michael Sharon Wright. Now Joseph wasn't the type to let small problems just sit there and fester. Friends say he was the kind of man who believed in handling things directly, calmly, face to face. And on this day, with his mother preparing to say goodbye to the home she'd lived in for years, he wasn't about to let someone treat the property like their personal dumping ground. So Joseph decided to talk to Wright about it. A simple conversation. At least that's what it was supposed to be. But there's something about these moments when two lives carrying years of different histories suddenly collide. Teresa's life of giving and service, and Michael's life marked by violence and prison time. The children stayed in the car with their mother, doors closed, unaware of how quickly the atmosphere outside was about to shift. The sunlight was fading now, casting long shadows across Maple Street. What had started as an ordinary family errand was slowly turning into a scene heavy with tension, one that no one on that street would ever forget. Joseph crossed the street, expecting nothing more than a conversation, just two neighbors talking about a problem and moving on with their lives. But like so many moments that start off simple, this one took a turn no one saw coming. Joseph had brought his legally owned firearm with him that day. Friends and family described him as protective, the kind of man who took his role as a father seriously, especially with his 3 small children nearby. For him, carrying his weapon wasn't about intimidation or trying to be tough. It was about being prepared, about making sure nothing threatened the safety of his family. What happened next is still under investigation, but here's what we know. Words were exchanged, tensions escalated, and within seconds, the situation completely spiraled out of control. At some point during that confrontation, Michael Wright gained control of Joseph's gun, and then the sound of gunfire shattered the evening calm. Joseph was hit first, collapsing right there in front of his mother's old home. Teresa screamed and moved toward her son, because that's what any mother would do, but more shots rang out. Teresa was struck down while her grandbabies and Joseph's partner watched in absolute horror from inside the car parked only feet away. For those children, it was an unthinkable scene. Their father and grandmother were gunned down before their eyes. The sound of bullets replaced the laughter that had filled the car just minutes earlier. Can you imagine, 1 second your daddy's handling some grown-up business, the next second he's on the ground and your grandmom is screaming. Joseph's partner dialed 911, her voice breaking as she described the chaos, the crying of their children heard clearly in the background. Neighbors emerged from their homes, some frozen in shock, others scrambling for cover. The quiet of Maple Street was now shattered by violence that nobody saw coming. When the gunfire stopped, silence took over Maple Street. But it wasn't peace, it was the kind of silence that comes when people are too shocked to even breathe. Neighbors stepped out of their homes, some in complete disbelief, others frozen at the sight before them. Teresa Davis, 63 years old, and her son, 26-year-old Joseph Jeffries Jr., lay in the driveway, their lives cut short just steps from each other. The bright yellow police tape that would soon surround the area wasn't there yet, just raw grief and confusion spilling into the street. Joseph's partner sat in that car, holding their children, all 3 of them crying uncontrollably. Those babies, too young to even process what had happened, had just watched their father collapse, and their grandmother fall seconds later. No child should ever have to see something like that, but their screams joined the sirens that were now racing toward Maple Street. Within minutes, Henderson police arrived with weapons drawn, scanning for the suspect. Reports quickly spread through the neighborhood. The shooter was considered armed and dangerous, and residents were warned to stay inside their homes and lock their doors. The neighborhood that had been quiet just hours earlier now looked like the center of a war zone. Patrol cars lined the street, crime scene markers dotting the pavement where Teresa and Joseph had fallen. Investigators working methodically as neighbors huddled together, trying to make sense of what they'd just heard and seen. For those who lived there, Maple Street would never feel the same. A simple Father's Day had turned into a nightmare, a crime scene unfolding in front of homes where children normally played and families waved hello to each other from their porches. And at the heart of it all were 3 children holding on to their mother, terrified and confused. They didn't know what any of it meant. All they knew was that their daddy wasn't getting up, their grandmother wasn't moving, and the world outside their car window had suddenly become terrifying. This was no longer just a neighborly dispute over some trash. This was a double homicide, and Henderson was shaken to its core. As investigators worked the scene, the question on everyone's mind was simple. Where was Michael Sharon Wright? Police wasted no time issuing warrants for his arrest on 2 counts of homicide. He was classified as armed and dangerous, and Henderson residents were told to stay inside, lock their doors, and report any sign of him immediately. Moving on to what happened next. Because this story was far from over, the manhunt that followed would grip the entire community, and when Wright was finally caught, the details that emerged would have people questioning everything about our justice system.
And more breaking news now. A mother and her adult son were shot and killed in Vance County tonight. The suspect is considered armed and dangerous, and he's still at large. This happened around 6:45 this evening on Maple Street in Henderson. Police say they found 63-year-old Teresa Davis and her 26-year-old son, Joseph Jeffries Jr., dead at the scene. The WRAL breaking news tracker was on the scene earlier where there was a large police presence. Police don't have the suspect in custody, but they believe they know who he is. Take a look at this man right here. This is 41-year-old Michael Wright. Detectives have obtained warrants against him for the homicides of both the mother and her son. Police say Wright was last seen driving off in a white Hyundai Sonata with a North Carolina license plate KEE 6554. If you see him, police ask that you do not approach him. Anyone with information on where he might be should call the Henderson Police Department at 252-438-4141 or call 911 immediately. And you can look for updates on WRAL News tomorrow morning starting at 4:30 a.m.
The manhunt didn't last long. By the next morning, Michael Sharon Wright was in custody. And let me tell you something, the community was ready for answers. He was processed at the Granville County Detention Center and ordered held without bond, meaning he wouldn't be walking out this time, at least not anytime soon.
A lot more about the man accused of killing his neighbor and her son in an argument over trash in Henderson.
CBS 17's Baron James has been speaking with the neighbors. He joins us live from Maple Street where this all happened. Baron.
Yeah, Angela and Rod, family, friends, and neighbors all tell me that, ironically, Teresa Davis had just moved out of this old house to start a new life in Lewisburg, living with her son, Joseph Jeffries Jr., when tragically they both lost their lives, gunned down, one here in this driveway, the other here in the street in a car between the victim's old home and the suspect's house. Take a look at this. This is about happening on Sunday, and Teresa Davis was shot to death. Her family tells me right in front of her 3 grandchildren and their mom as they sat in the car in front of the 63-year-old grandmother's house, which she had dropped by on Sunday to clear things out. Just before Davis was shot, neighbors and family members tell us her 26-year-old son, Joseph Jeffries Jr., was shot and killed with his own gun by suspect Michael Wright's home. They tell us Jeffrey confronted Wright about several garbage bags thrown in his mom's front yard. The Granville County Sheriff arrested the 41-year-old Wright this morning, charging him with killing a mother and her son on Father's Day, leaving 3 young children, all under age 6, fatherless.
That's so heartbreaking. But for her kids, the grandkids to be in the car and his kids, to see their daddy and their grandmother get killed, that it was over trash. Over some freaking trash. This woman is gone. This boy is gone over some trash.
Tonight, Michael Wright is locked up in the Granville County Detention Center on no bond ahead of his first appearance, adding to his long criminal rap sheet, which also includes, according to public records, nearly 11 years spent in prison for the murder of his uncle. And his latest case remains open as an active investigation back out here live into this fatal feud between neighbors over trash. For now, we're live in Henderson, Vance County. Baron James, CBS 17 News.
All right.
Now that no bond decision, that mattered because Michael Wright's past wasn't just any ordinary criminal record. This was a man who had already been convicted of killing his own uncle back in 2010, a crime that sent him to prison for nearly 15 years. People in Henderson were absolutely stunned. How could someone with that kind of violent history be out walking free in the first place? The debate hit social media immediately. Neighbors, family members, and even strangers were weighing in from every angle. Some folks were saying if he'd served a life sentence like he deserved the first time, Teresa and Joseph would still be alive today. Others were questioning why early release was granted at all. Was this a failure of the justice system, or proof that some people simply shouldn't get second chances? Legal experts chimed in too, pointing out that having already served time for one homicide, another conviction could mean Wright never sees freedom again. Prosecutors were expected to seek the maximum penalty, knowing the community was already demanding it. But the public conversation wasn't just about this case. It was about every time someone with a violent record gets a fresh start, only for tragedy to follow. Some argued rehabilitation should always be possible. Others felt this was proof that some people are simply too dangerous to reintegrate into our communities. But all of that was distant noise for the family that had just lost 2 people in one day. For them, the legal debates and online arguments couldn't undo the reality. Teresa and Joseph were gone, and 3 children had to grow up without their father, knowing the man accused of taking his life had already killed once before. Teresa Davis was known on Maple Street as someone you could always count on. A devoted grandmother, a woman with a giving spirit, she was the kind of neighbor who looked out for others not because she had to, but because that's just who she was. Her son Joseph Jeffries Jr. carried that same heart, a loving partner and hands-on father of 3. He worked hard to protect and provide for his family. That Sunday, his children, each under 6 years old, sat just feet away as everything unraveled. They watched their father fall, then their grandmother. Joseph's partner, frozen in the front seat, witnessed it all with no time to react, no way to stop it. The trauma of that moment is something none of them will ever forget. And for what? A trash dispute. That's what neighbors say sparked it all. A disagreement over debris escalated into irreversible loss. But beneath the surface lies something deeper that we all need to think about. How do we weigh forgiveness against public safety? Michael Wright had already taken a life and was given another chance. His wife even stood by him, updating her social media with pictures of the 2 of them after the shooting. Messages of love beneath a storm of disbelief and anger from the community. Should he have ever been released? Should redemption outweigh risk when violence already lives in someone's past? These are the hard questions left behind after 2 more lives were taken. As the sirens faded and the street returned to silence, one truth remained. Teresa and Joseph mattered. Their lives weren't disposable. And maybe the hardest question of all is this: how many tragedies like this one will it take before we really examine who we're letting back into our communities? I said what I said. Stick with us as we bring you more stories that deserve to be heard. If this story affected you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more cases that need attention. Hit that like button, turn on notifications, because we shine light on stories that live in the shadows, because every victim deserves to have their story told.